How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Kuf Yud Ches, Daf 118 of Masechta BavaMetzia. Friends, your friends. Hey, we're getting close. Givaldig. All right, let's do it. Okay, we're going to start in Daf Kuf Yud Zayin Amud Beis. At the Mishnah at the bottom. V'chein, similarly, Beis Habad shehu banui Besela vegina achas al gabov v'nifchas harei balagina yord v'zorei lemato ad sheyaise lebeis bado kifin. Okay, so this is a scenario where you have I don't know, a cave, I guess, like some cave kind of thing, which is like a hollowed out thing in like rock or something, or like a mountain, I don't know, there's some like dugout kind of situation. And in that dugout kind of situation is an olive press, and on top of the dugout kind of situation, there's like ground, and it's like, how about this? Imagine like a hobbit in the Shire. So you have like a dugout kind of situation, and it's like in the mountain kind of thing, and on top of it, it's all like grassy and stuff. So on top of it, so let's say Reuven and Shimon's father. Reuven's and Shimon's father. His name was Bilbo Baggins, and he was Nifter. And Reuven and Shimon inherited Bilbo Baggins' mansion over there in the Shire, and Reuven makes it into an olive press inside, and Shimon on top of it plants some vegetables. That's the Metzias. So again, Tzvichin Beis Habad Shehu Banui Besela. So if you have a olive press like built in like a hobbit home in the rock, vegina achas al gabav. So Reuven's got the olive press inside, and Shimon's got the vegetable patch on top. V'nifchas, and the cave thing kind of collapses, and memele, if the cave caves in. If the cave caves in, is that where the phrase caves in comes from? From this Mishnah. The term caves in comes from this Mishnah. It comes from the second to last Mishnah, the third to last Mishnah of BavaMetzia, where we get the term caves in. So and the cave caves in, and in Mele, Shimon's vegetable patch is gone. So v'nifchas, so the cave caves in. Sorry, I gotta rub my eye. Ma, you're not getting an apology for that. You only get an apology when I rub my nose. Alright. This apology goes to everybody at Babylon Talmud, alright? Sorry about that. V'nifchas, and the cave caves in. Harei bal hagina yored v'zorea lemata. So what does Shimon do? Shimon lost his vegetable patch. So he goes down into the cave and can plant his vegetables in there. Ad sheyeose leveis bado kifin, until Reuven repairs his cave and builds, domes on top of it to restore it, and then Shimon can go back to planting his vegetable patch on top. In the meantime, he will plant the vegetable patch below in the cave. Hakosel ve'ilon shenoflu rishus arabim. If you have a wall or a tree that falls into rishus arabim ve'eziko and caused damage, potter mi lishalem, the owner of the wall or the tree is exempt from paying. However, noslo zman lokut tzeilim v'listos hakosel. But if it was apparent that this wall or this tree, its days were numbered, and it was just a matter of time until it would fall down and cause damage in the public domain. V'naflu b'soch has right, and so they gave the owner time, a certain amount of time. The Gemara is going to say how much time, but a certain amount of time to take down the wall or the tree. So if the tree or the wall fell down b'soch hazman within the allotted amount of time, okay, so potter. So he's potter because there was still more time, right? He didn't do anything wrong. He still had time before he had to take it down. La'achar zaman hazman chayv. But if it fell down, after already the time was up, so he was in violation of the court order to take down the tree or the wall. Well, then of course he's going to be chayv. Mishaya koslo samuch liginas chavero. Okay, so what if Shimon had a wall, and his wall was right next to, bordered on Ruvain's field? Okay, v'nofal, and Shimon's wall falls down. V'amar le panei avonecha. So Reuven says, "Hey Shimon, your wall fell down into my field. I want to plant. Can you get rid of those stones?" V'amar, and Shimon says, "You know what, Reuven? Higiyucha. Keep the stones. You can have them, and obviously you can clear them away. But I'm giving you the stones; they're yours, and clear them away, keep them, whatever. You deal with it, Betzim. Ain't Shimon though. Shimon. It's not Shimon. It's not up to Shimon to decide that now Reuven's the owner of the stones, and that Shimon now doesn't have to clear them away. If Reuven doesn't want him, he doesn't need to take him. And and that doesn't absolve Shimon of responsibility. Misha kibel alav. Now, if, however, Reuven said, you know what? All right, fine. I'll clear them away. And sure, and I'm keeping them. They're mine. Okay, yeah, sure. I'll deal with it, and I'll keep the stones. Thank you very much. It's a headache, but okay, say it. So Mishakiba Olav Amarlo Helach Esitziosecha Vani Etol Es Shali Ain Shomino. Now if Reuven says, okay, fine, you know what, I'm gonna deal with clearing them away and I'll keep them. And then if after Reuven clears them away, Shimon says, you know what, Reuven, I'm gonna pay you for your efforts and I want back the stones. No way, no how. Reuven already went through the headache of clearing them away with the understanding that he would then be able to keep the stones. So then he keeps the stones. Shimon can't just be like, all right, here, take some money and give me back the stones. It's not in his right at that point. Fine. So a similar, slightly different, but similar, the Gemara is of course going to discuss it, a similar case. Okay? Shimon hires Reuven as a worker to clear away straw. Ve'omar lo tein li schari, and after Reuven clears away the straw, he says to Shimon, okay, the job is done, time to pay me. Ve'omar lo to ma asher asisu b'scharcha, and Shimon says, you know what, Reuven, how about this, instead of me paying you money, why don't you just keep the straw that you were moving away all day, just take that. Ain't shomin lo. Nisht. No, Reuven does not have to accept the straw. He could say, no, I want money. Mishakibel olav. Now, if Reuven says, all right, fine, I'll take the straw. Okay, beseder. Ve'amelo, okay, ve'amelo, heilach scharcha vani etol es shali. If Shimon then, after Reuven says, okay, fine, you know what, I'll take the straw, then after that, Shimon says, here, take money. Here, take the money that I owe you, and I want the straw. Ain't Shimon lo. We don't listen to Shimon. If Reuven accepted that, yeah, fine, I'll take the straw, well then Shimon can't come later on and say, actually no, here, take some money and I want the straw. No, Shimon already took the straw, he's keeping it, and if he wants to keep it, he keeps it, and that's that. Okie dokie. Alright, there are a few scenarios in that Gemara, but let's in that Mishnah, so let's check out the Gemara. Alright. Nifchaso. Okay, this of course is a familiar machlokas from, was it yesterday? Must have been yesterday, right? Because we didn't really, this whole parak was only like 2 daf. Yeah, I think it was yesterday. Nifchaso. So we talked about the Hobbit home. Is there a name for a Hobbit home? I don't know. It's been a while since I read Lord of the Rings. anyways, the Hobbit home collapses. So Reuven's Hobbit olive press collapses. So Shimon's vegetable patch gets messed up. So we say Shimon can go and plant down, in the cave. So Nifchasa, right? We talked about caving in, right? So Nifchasa. So if the cave caves in, Rav Omar birubo, Shmuel Omar bi'arba'a. Right? This, of course, was the machlokes that we saw yesterday. Rav says, in order for Shimon to be able to plant in the cave, it would have had to have collapsed a majority of the ceiling, which is Mimela, also Shimon's vegetable patch. Whereas Shmuel says, even if it is a 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim, that's enough for Shimon to be able to go down and plant inside the cave. Rav Amar Beruba, Rav says only once it caves in a majority. Aval Barba, but if it's just 4 tefachim, Adam Zoreh Chetzio Lamata v'Chetzio Lamayla. Well then, if it was only 4 tefachim, well then Reuven just basically gives Shimon a little bit of an area down right in the cave to plant, but the rest he would plant upstairs. Ushmuel Amar, whereas right above, Ushmuel Amar, Shmuel says, Barba Ein Adam Zoreh Chetzio Lamata v'Chetzio Lamayla. No, once already there is 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim that has caved in. So then Shimon can plant entirely downstairs because, he's not going to plant partially below, partially above. No, he could just go and plant downstairs. It's Richa, and we need both scenarios. What was the other scenario? The other scenario was that if Reuven is renting an upstairs apartment from Shimon, and Shimon lives downstairs, and the floor, fell apart. So Rav said it has to fall apart a majority of the floor in order for Reuven to be able to move in with Shimon, whereas Shmuel said that even if it's just 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim, Reuven can already move in with Shimon. So they're basically saying the same thing both by the rental apartment as well as by the vegetable patch on top of the olive press. We need both of these scenarios. If we would have the first case of the dire, so Behaka Amar Shmuel. So I might say that is where Shmuel says that 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim already he can move in with Shimon. Mishum delo avidi inshe dedare portaacho. Because Shmuel says it's crazy to think that Shimon should have to, that Reuven should have to live partially upstairs and partially downstairs, right? We said, like, for example, Shimon could say, hey Reuven, why don't you just move your washing machine downstairs? It's crazy that he's going to have to go downstairs when he has to do laundry, to go to Shimon's apartment to do laundry, and then the rest of the time he's going to be upstairs, and basically part of his life he's downstairs, part of life he's upstairs. No, a person needs one place to go, right? Or maybe it's not his, maybe to make it a little bit more invasive, it's not his washing machine, it's his refrigerator. Imagine that, right? Shimon says, okay, Reuven, you can put your refrigerator downstairs. Now what? Every time he needs to get up, he's going to go down to Shimon's apartment. So therefore, Shimon says in that case, if it's 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim, we already say that's enough for Reuven to be able to just move on in with Shimon downstairs. Avol the Indian Zriya, but in terms of planting, you can have different patches. People plant a shtickle here, a shtickle there. So therefore, like for example, my neighbor outside, she plants the plants outside of my windows. She plants the plants outside of her windows and in the park and wherever she can plant, she plants. So there, the Rav. So I might think that Shmuel says in that case he would agree with Rav that Reuven would only be able to plant entirely downstairs in the cave only once it's a majority of the ceiling that collapses. So therefore, we need the Mishnah to say that no. So therefore, we need to know that Shmuel's opinion stands also when we're talking about the cave and the vegetable patch. V'itmar b'hach, and if we would only have the case of the dire, of the apartment, b'hach ka'amar Rav, that is where Rav, No. If we would only have the case of the olive press in the cave, Behach Omar Rav, that is where Rav would say that, right, that you can only plant down entirely in the cave once it's a majority, because people plant in different places. But by the house, maybe maybe you would admit with Shmuel that it's very inconvenient to have to live partially upstairs and partially downstairs, so maybe 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim should be enough. So tzricha, therefore we need both cases, the case of the dira and the case of the cave, and to say that Rav and Shmuel hold to their respective opinions in both scenarios. So we said that if there was a wall or a tree that was getting dangerous, so they tell the owner, hey, you have a certain amount of time during which you have to take it down. V'chamazman bezdin, how much is considered the time of bezdin? Right, that if we're saying that we give them time, how much time is it? So Rabbi Yechanan says it is 30 days, that we give him 30 days. I guess the default amount of bezdin is 30 days, and if after 30 days he had not yet taken down the wall or his tree, so then he's responsible. Alright. Misha oya koslo v'chule. Alright. Fine. Alright. Right. Okay. So we had said that if you have Shimon as a wall next to Ruvain's field, okay, and then Shimon's wall falls into Ruvain's field. Ruvain then asks of Shimon, hey, can you remove the stones? So Shimon says, hey Ruvain, why don't you just keep the stones? You clear them away and you keep them. So we say, no, ein shomin lo. So we don't, right? So what was it? So where are we? So Misha Yikoz v'chule. So Hamliktani Sefer Heilach Yitziosecha Mechlal de Paninu Askinon. Time the Paninu. Hello, Paninu. No, low. Okay, fine. So again, so the Shimon's wall fall into Ruvain's domain. Ruvain says to Shimon, hey, can you clear away your stones? And Shimon says, so there's two options. Well, okay, so Shimon says to Ruvain, like, hey, why don't you clear away the stones and then you keep the stones? So Ruvain can say, no, that doesn't work for me. I want you to clear away the stones. But what was the other option? The Mishnah said, Misha Kibel Olav, that if Ruvain had said, okay, fine, I'll do that. I'll clear away the stones and I'm going to keep them. So if at that point, after Ruvain has cleared away the stones, Shimon says, hey, you know what, actually I'm going to pay you for your efforts and I'm going to take back the stones, we don't listen to him. So the Gemara wants to be medayik that the reason why we don't listen to Shimon at that point, and meaning that the stones therefore belong to Ruvain at that point, is because he moved away the stones. Right? Remember, Shimon says to Ruvain, hey, why don't you move away the stones and you can keep them? Right? Shimon says that to Ruvain. So we're saying if Ruvain said, okay, fine, I'll do that, and he does it, he moves away the stones, and now they're his. If at this point Shimon says to Ruvain, hey, you know what, let me actually pay you and I'll take back the stones, we don't listen to him. We don't listen to Shimon. The implication being, what we want to be medayik is because Ruvain had already moved away the stones. That's why Shimon can no longer say, hey, I want to pay you and I'm going to take them. The implication being that if Ruvain had not yet moved away the stones, well then Shimon would be able to say, hey, here, take the money, I want to take back the stones. But the question is why? Okay, so let's look at the Gemara. So, Hamidikatani Seifa, from the fact that it says right after that, Heilach Yitziosecha, that, hey, let me pay you for your efforts that you invested to move the stones away. Michlal de Paninu Askinon, so we're talking about where Ruvain had already moved away the stones. And we're saying at that point, Shimon can't offer him money and take back the stones. Taima de Paninu. So the reason why Shimon can't just say, here, take this money and I'm going to take back the stones is because Ruvain had already moved them away. Halo Paninu. But if Ruvain had not yet moved away the stones, lo, then Shimon would be able to say, hey, you know what? Here, take this money and I'll take care of it. Wait, what? Alopaninu. Lo, meaning if he hadn't yet moved away the stones, well, then they wouldn't belong to Reuven yet. So amai, but why would they not yet belong to Reuven? V'tiknele sadeu. Right? Meaning we're saying only once Reuven has moved them away do they belong to him, and Shimon can't just say, hey, I'm going to take them back. But if he hadn't yet moved them away, then they're not yet Reuven's. But why not? The fact that they are in his field should be enough for him to be koneh those stones. That a person's chotzer is koneh even without his knowledge. So these stones should be Reuven's regardless of if he cleared them away or not. When Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina says that a person's chotzer is able to be koneh even right without his knowledge, that is when the makne wants to be makne. Right? So, for example, if I buy you a chocolate bar and I'm walking by your house and I throw it into your chatzer, so I'm like, hey, you enjoy the chocolate bar, and I throw it into your chatzer. So even though you don't know that I threw the chocolate bar into your chatzer, but it's in your chatzer now and it belongs to you because I want the chocolate bar to belong to you, and now it's yours. It's in your chatzer. You don't even know, but it's yours now. Here, though, this wasn't the case. In this case, with the stone, Shimon's wall that fell down to Reuven, he didn't actually want Reuven to own those stones. When he says, hey, why don't you clear it away and then you can keep them, it was a delay tactic. It was a stalling tactic because he couldn't say like, hey, I'll do it later. What do you mean what do you mean you're going to do it later? I want to work my field right now. What do you mean you're going to do it later? So instead, Shimon says, you know what? How about this? Why don't you keep them? You deal with it. You keep with it. Right? That way, you can kind of like, Reuven won't give him a hard time right now. But that way, Shimon didn't actually intend to be makneh them to Reuven, and he intended to come back later and take them back. But once already Reuven has moved them away, so then at that point he owns them, and Shimon can't say, hey, here, take some money, and I'm going to take them back. Hasocher lasos imo b'teven chulei. Okay. So we had said that if Shimon had hired Reuven to move around some straw, okay, Shimon had hired Reuven to move around some straw, so Reuven does it. He moves around whatever straw he had to move around. Now the job is over. Reuven says to Shimon, okay, I want to get paid. And Shimon says, well, why don't you just take the, why don't you just take the straw? So we say ain't shomen though, right? We say Reuben doesn't have to take the straw; he could take the money. He could say, no, I want money. If he accepted the straw, so then Shimon can't say, you know what, actually take the money and I'll take the straw. Says the Gemara Utzricha. We need both scenarios. Both the scenario, right? Because both these scenarios are very similar, right? Shimon's wall falling into Reuven's field, and Shimon says, hey, you deal with them and you can keep it, so we don't listen to Reuven. We don't listen to Shimon. And if Reuven, says fine and he moves them away, then Shimon can't change his mind and say, you know what, I'm just going to pay you and I'm going to take him back. Similarly, right, if Shimon hires Reuven to move around this straw and then it comes time to be paid and Shimon says to Reuven, here, just take the straw as your payment, we don't need to listen to Shimon. If after Reuven accepts, Shimon says, you know what, actually take the money and I'll take back the straw, we don't listen to Shimon. So they're very similar cases. Why do you need both? Because if you have the first case, the case of Shimon's wall falling into Reuven's field, that when Shimon says to Reuven, hey, just keep why don't you move away the stones and keep them? And we say we don't listen to him. Mishum deleis lei agro gabe. It's because Shimon doesn't owe Reuven any money. exactly, and therefore Reuven doesn't have to accept. So let's just go weiter for a second. Aval hacha, but in the case of the straw, where Shimon hired Reuven to move away the straw, the Isle Agragabe, where Shimon owes Reuven money, Ema, I'll say Shomalo, that we should listen to Shimon's offer and say, just take the straw. We've seen this statement before, that when you're owed money, take anything. Right? If Shimon lends Reuven $1,000, and Reuven doesn't seem to be paying back Shimon very quickly, if at all, and all of a sudden Shimon has an opportunity to accept bran, so you know what, Shimon, just accept the bran and sell it to somebody else, figure out what it is, but just at this point just take what you can. So therefore, so I might think that, okay, so in the case of Shimon's wall falling into Reuven's field, so Shimon doesn't owe Reuven anything, right? So therefore I could say, I understand that, okay, Reuven could say, no, I'm not, I'm not taking your stones, I'm not doing anything with the stones, I want you to move them. But in the second case, where Shimon hired Reuven to move away the straw, and now Shimon owes Reuven money, so I might think that it's similar to the case where we would say, right, that we should say, look, Reuven, just accept anything. If he's offering you straw, just take the straw. So therefore we say that no, Shimon can't make Reuven take this straw, because they had an arrangement, a financial, right? He's working for Shimon, and there's lo salim pula sochir, and if they made up to be paid in money, he can be paid up, he gets paid in money, and Shimon can't force him to take the straw. And we would only have the case of the straw, kishemikabel olav ein shomin lo, mishum de is le agrogabe, avaloch de leise agrogabe, ema shomin lo tzricha. That if we only had the case of the Reuven moving the wheat for the straw for Shimon, I might think that in that case, once Reuven has accepted the straw as payment, Shimon can't change his mind, because Shimon had owed Reuven payment. Reuven accepted this as the payment. It's now Reuven's. Shimon can't take that away from him. Whereas in the first case, Shimon doesn't owe Reuven anything, so maybe after Reuven moves it away, Shimon would be able to say, hey, wait, I'm going to pay you and I'll take it back. So tzricha, we need both of those cases to say that in both cases it would be kind of the same idea, that Shimon can't force Reuven to kind of accept his deal, and if Reuven does accept the deal, then Shimon can't kind of go back on it. Okay, that was really technical. Fine. Ein shomin lo, v'atanya shomin lo. Okay, fine. So we had said that when Shimon hires Reuven to move this straw for him, okay, Shimon hires Reuven to move this straw for him. So we said if Shimon says to Reuven, hey, accept the straw as your payment, so the Mishnah says ein shomin lo. Reuven doesn't have to accept that as the payment. But we have a brayso that says that Reuven does accept it as the payment. So v'atani shomelo, that we do listen to him. So Amar of Nachman says, of Nachman lo kasha, it's no question. Kan b'shalo, kan b'shel chavero. Well, it depends who Reuven is working for. Well, Reuven, right? Whose straw is being moved around, right? If it's Shimon's straw that Reuven is moving, so he's working for Shimon, so then Shimon owes him money, and it's lo salim pula sochir itchad boker, and therefore if Reuven doesn't have to accept the straw, and he could say, no, I want to be paid in cash, so ein shomin lo. But if it turns out that actually it is Levi's straw, so then actually it's not Shimon who's paying Reuven, it's Levi, so then shomin lo, right? Meaning, because we don't have that relationship between Shimon and Reuven as the lo salim pula sochir, and therefore he would not be sort of forced to, right? Reuven can't say, no, we agreed to money. because he's not directly working for Shimon. Right? Reuven wouldn't say Davka money because he's not directly working for Shimon. So Kam B'Shalo. So if the straw is Shimon's and Reuven is working directly for Shimon, so then ain't Shomen Lo. Kam B'Shal Chavero. If the straw belongs to Levi and actually they're moving Levi's straw, so then Shomen Lo. Omelei Ravalu of Nachman says over to Rav Nachman B'Shalo my taima. When it is Shimon's straw, how come Reuven? How come Reuven ain't Shomen Lo? The Amalei Agroi Allah, because Reuven says to Shimon, you need to pay me what we agreed to. So B'Shel Chaveru Nami Scharo Alav. But even if it's Levi's straw, Reuven still says to Shimon, you need to pay me. The Tanya is learned by Sasorches Apoy Lasos B'Shalo, that if Shimon hires Reuven to work for him, but he ends up working for Levi, Nosin lo scharo mishalim. Shimon pays Reuven in full. Also, and then Shimon goes back to Levi and works things out with Levi. But Shimon would still pay Reuven directly. So that same relationship, regardless of if the straw belongs to Levi or if it belongs to Shimon, Reuven would still be getting paid from Shimon directly. And therefore, the same argument would be made, and we should say, Ein Shomen Lo. So Elo Omer Rav Nachman Lo Kasha, rather says Rav Nachman Lo Kasha, Kam B'Shalo, Kam B'Shel Hefker. Okay, so it depends. If it's Shimon's, so then Ein Shomen Lo. If it's Hefker, however, so then Shomen Lo. If it turns out that the straw was ownerless, and Shimon hired Reuven to move some Hefker straw, so then Shomen Lo, and Reuven would accept the Hefker straw as payment. Eisvei Rava Rav Nachman Rava Asakasha Rav Nachman Betzias Poyol Leatzmo, that if a worker, Reuven in this case, finds something, it belongs to him. A Mosai, when does it belong to him? Bizman she'amar lo balabayis nachesh imi hayom o ador imi hayom. If the balabayis says to the poil, to the worker, I'm hiring you to weed for me today, or I'm hiring you to dig for me today, like specific things. So if he now finds something, he could stop weeding for a second. Of course, he wouldn't be charging Shimon for weeding if he's not weeding, but he stopped for a second, he'll pick up the thing that he finds, and he'll get back to work. And he'll, whatever time he spent picking up the lost object, so then, whatever he finds, so then he will deduct it, of course, from the pay, but then it belongs to him. But if Shimon says to Reuven, if the Balabai says to the Poil, Asa imi melocha ayom, just do work for me, and he doesn't specify which specific work, so any work is for him. So Mitziyosu Balabai, so then even things that he finds, it would be right. His hand would be like the hand of the Balabais, and it would belong to the Balabais, and therefore, here where Reuven is specifically being hired to pick up straw, and he's picking up straw, so he's picking up straw for the Balabais, so it belongs to the Balabais, in which case it be'etzim becomes, right, it's no longer Hefker, it's be'etzim, the work that he's doing for the Balabais, and therefore, it should also be Ein Shomen Lo. So Ella, Rav Nachman, rather says, Rav Nachman Lo Kasha, Kan Be'agbo, Kan Be'abota. It depends what Reuven was hired to do. If he was hired to like pick up and schlep the straw, well then he's working for he's picking it up for Shimon, and therefore it would be Ein Shomen Lo. But what if he was hired just to guard the straw, where he's not moving it, or Rashi says maybe he's like kicking it down from a loft down to the bottom floor, so he's not actually picking it up and making a kinyan on it. So in that case, we could say, he hasn't actually acquired it for Shimon, and Shimon can say to Reuven, hey, why don't you take this straw and be paid with that? And in that case, we would say Shomen Lo, that he could be paid that way. Wow, this is a very technical daf. All right. Amar Rabba, says Rabba, aboto behefker tanoi. He says Rabba that this concept of can you acquire something by looking at it is a machlokas tanoim ditnan that we learn in the Mishnah. Shomrei sviche shvis notlin scharin mitrumas alishka. Rabbi Yossi Omer Arotzim Misnadev Hu v'Shomachinam Amrulo Ato Omer Ken Ein Boin Mishal Tzibur. So this is talking about during Shemitah. Now during Shemitah, obviously you're not planting the land. So now, but even during Shemitah, there's still a Korban HaOmer which comes from barley. There's still Shtei Alechem on Shavuos which comes from wheat. So if you have somebody who's guarding the sviche, so let's read this again. So the Tanan, Shomrei sviche shvius. So if somebody is guarding the aftergrowths on Shemitah, right? The barley and the wheat that just kind of grows on its own during Shemitah. So then, so these people are guarding it. For the barley for the minchas ha'omer, or the wheat for the shtei alechem. So noten tzcharim mitrumas alishka. So the Tanna Kama says that we pay them from the trumas alishka. Okay, from the half shekel coins that people donate to the Beis Hamikdash every year. Rabbi Yossi Omer Arotzim Misnadevu v'Shomer Chinam. Whereas Rabbi Yossi says that whoever wants to do this job of watching the barley and the wheat, he can donate his time, he can volunteer his time, and he would be considered a shomer chinam. Amrulo, to which the rabbis, the Tanna Kama says to Rabbi Yossi, Ata Omer Kain, if you say this, if it's so that that he's just volunteering, Ein Bon Mishal Tzibor, the minchas ha'omer and the shtei alechem won't then be coming from public, from the public. It would be coming from this particular watchman. My lab, let's say that this is the machlokas, the Tanna Kama sover habotav befker koni. That according to the Tanna Kama, just looking at hefker, and of course Shemitah is hefker, just looking at hefker would be koneet, which would mean that it would belong to the watchman. V'yahive le agra in v'lo lo. Now, if they're paying him, well, then they're paying him, and he's working for them, and anything he would acquire would be for hektish, for the tzibur. But if they're not paying him, then it's for him, and he's basically going to acquire the wheat and the barley for himself. Rabbi Yossi says that looking at hefker is not kone the hefker. V'chi azle tzibur umaisi hashtu tikazachi bei. And at the time that the tzibur, that the congregation then goes and offers this barley and this wheat, at that point the tzibur is kona it. Uma ata omer. And what does it mean when the rabbis say to Rabbi Yossi that that according to him be'etzem the wheat and the barley would be coming from the watchman and not from the community? This is what they're saying. This is what they're saying to Rabbi Yossi. That based on your view, which is that the watchman can even be a volunteer, based on how we understand things, which is that looking at hefker would be kona it, well then ein omer v'shtei alechem bon mishal tzibor. Well then what will end up happening is that the omer and the shtei alechem won't be coming from the community, or they will be coming from this private watchman, because based on how we understand things, which is that habota is kona behefker. So if he's a shomer chinam, like you're suggesting, Rabbi Yossi, well then, based on how we see things, he would be koneid himself, which means that the shtei alechem and the owner would be coming from him, but we need it to be coming from the community. Whereas we want to say that Rabbi Yossi holds, though, that abata is not koneh be'efker, and therefore wouldn't be coming from him anyways. On my Rava says, Rava lo, no. Tichuli alma habata behefker kani. Rava wants to argue that everyone agrees that habata behefker kani. Everyone agrees, both the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi agree, that even looking that just looking at hefker would be enough to be kohen. Okay, then how do you understand Rabbi Yossi? Why does he say that it can even be a shomer chinam? The question is, yeah, sure, Rabbi Yossi also agrees that the watchman will be kohen the barley and the wheat. The question is, do we trust that he will then hand them over and relinquish his ownership to the community? The Rabbanan say, no, we have to pay him so that he won't actually be kohen it, because if we don't pay him, we're concerned that since he will be kohen it by looking at it, and they will belong to him, and he won't give it over properly to the community, and the Omer and Shtei Lechem will be coming from him and not from the community. Rabbi Yossi Sofer lo chashinan shema lo yimtzum yafe yafe, and Rabbi Yossi says, nah, we aren't concerned about this. We are not concerned that he's gonna keep it for himself. He will give it to the community, and that'll be fine. Uma ta Omer, and what is it that the rabbis are saying that based on what you're saying, Rabbi Yossi, then it won't be coming from the community, it'll be coming from him. Hachi ka'amr le, this is what they're saying to Rabbi Yossi, midvarech l'dvarenu, that based on your opinion, which is that even a shomer chinam, a volunteer, can watch the wheat and the barley, lidvarenu, based on our concern that he won't give it over properly, well then, the chashin and shebloim sum yafa yafa, that we're concerned that he won't give it over properly to the community, ein omer v'shtei lechem boyin mishal tzibur, we are concerned that, that being the case, the omer and the shtei lechem will not then be coming from the community, they will be coming from this private watchman. Ikad amr, those who say, Rava Omar says, Rava d'chuli alma, habata behefker lo kani, that everybody agrees that habata behefker is not going to be kohen. Well, then what's the concern about the Rabbanan? Why do we say then that they need to pay him? He's not going to be kohen anyways. So the question is, are we concerned about mean bullies? That bullies are going to come and steal the wheat and the barley. The Tanakama Sover, the Takina Rabbanan Lemesavle Arba Zuze, that according to the Tanakama, we pay the watchman, so that the bullies will hear, okay, right, the rabbis are paying this person because this is hektish, we don't want to mess with hektish, we're going to leave it alone, we're not going to be bullies. For Rabbi Yossi Sofer, lo, Takinu, whereas the Rabbi Yossi says, nah, we're not concerned about bullies over here, and therefore we don't need to pay him, and Habata is not Kona anyway, so therefore there is no concern. Umaha ata Omer, and what's pshat with the rabbi saying based on what you're saying and based on our view, then it will be coming from tzibur. It won't be coming from tzibur, it will be coming from private. Umaha ata Omer achi kamer le midvarech ledvarenu ein ban mishal tzibur. Fine, Rashi, we kind of rely on. Okay, yeah, actually the Gosut Sudim adds two important words. Tmidinu Musafin will not be coming from the tzibur, will be coming from him. So, what it means is that the rabbis say to Rabbi Yossi, yeah, look, we agree that Habata is not going to, right, looking at the Hefker is not going to be Koneit. The concern though is that based on what we're saying, which is that we pay the watchman because we're concerned about the bullies. If it were be like you, that he could essentially say that no, I'm just going to volunteer. The problem with that is that the Rabbanan, right, the Rabbi is saying, well, based on what we say, which is that we offer him 4 zuz. If he is mochel, he says, no, I don't need the 4 zuz. The problem is that now there's 4 zuz in the lishka, and the lishka, the trumas halishka is also used to buy a communal korbanos, like korban tamid and korban musaf. So what's going to end up happening is there's now going to be 4 zuz in the temple treasury that really belongs to this watchman, and he said, no, I don't need it, but it belongs to him. So now, mixed into the temple treasury, there's 4 zuz of privately owned money, that really should be going to this watchman, but he says I don't need it. And now when we buy a korban musaf one day with this money, it's actually not communal money, it's private money, and then that's going to be a problem because then it's not going to be a communal offering. Similarly, when Ravin came, Amr Rabbi Yochanan, says the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Chosh in the Bali Zoros, that yes, the nafkaminu between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi is about, are we concerned about Bali Zoros? Wow, this is a chazak daf. And now for the final Mishnah of the day. Hamotzi zevel l'rishus arabim. Okay, so if a person brings fertilizer to the public domain, hamotzi v'amzav. So you got to do it quick, right? You can't just take fertilizer and just leave it forever, indefinitely in the public domain. No, you bring fertilizer, you deliver it, you give it to the gardener, and he immediately takes the fertilizer and he uses it to fertilize the field. So amotzi zevel l'rishus arabim. Again, somebody who brings fertilizer to rishus arabim. Motzi, the person who brings it. Takes it out. And the person who fertilizes with it immediately fertilizes with it. And sure, in tit b'rishus harabim, we don't leave clay just sitting in the rishus harabim. Vein lovnim leveinim, and we don't make bricks with mud in the rishus harabim out in the public domain. Aval govlin tit b'rishus harabim, but we can mix mortar, or I guess nowadays maybe that would be like cement in rishus harabim. For immediate use. Avalo levenim, but we don't use them to mix mud in order to make bricks and leaving it in your rishus harabim. Habone b'rishus harabim, somebody who's building in the public domain. Hamevi avone mevi v'abone bone. So whoever's bringing the stones brings the stones, and immediately the builder builds them into the building. And even though you are allowed to do this, right? You take the stones, you bring them to rishus harabim, the builder then puts them in the building. This is all, this is completely fine. But still, if damage is caused, so you're still responsible for the damage. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Omer says, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel af mesakinus malachtu lifnei shloshim yom. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, no, no. He even has 30 days to start getting organized and preparing materials, bring them to rishus harabim. He can leave them there for 30 days. And even if damage is caused, he's potter, he's allowed to do this for 30 days before, while he's working on the project. He's allowed to bring materials and leave them there. And because he's allowed to do that, he's not responsible for any damages or anything like that. So let's say that our Mishnah, the Tanakama, who says that you would be chayiv for any damages. So if you bring stones to be built into a building and you're doing everything properly, you bring the stones and the builders are building them right away, but some damage happens somehow. So Tanakama says you're chayiv. So let's say that that's unlike Rabbi Yehuda. The Masnisin Delok Rabbi Yehuda, the Tanya that we learn in the Brayso, Rabbi Yehuda Omer says Rabbi Yehuda, B'shas otzoas zivolim, that when a person is allowed to bring fertilizer out to the rishus harabim, or the motzi zval rishus harabim, he can bring his manure, I guess, to rishus harabim. V'tzovro kol shloshim yom, and he can pile it up there, manure, for 30 days. Kidei she'enishov v'ragli adam v'ragli be'ema, so that people and animals could step in the manure. And Sha'al Menasken Hinchil Yoshua L'Yisrael Haaretz, because that is why Yoshua brought the Yidden into Eretz Yisrael to step in manure. And I'll tell you, it's Mamish Arayom Hazeh. Mamish Arayom Hazeh. There's plenty of manure from all the dogs outside, and even the power washers, they power wash around the manure. They leave it for everybody. And Al Menasken Hinchil Yoshua L'Yisrael Haaretz. Ketaka be another proof why we shouldn't have the power washers, because the reason why we came into Eretz Yisrael in the first place is so we could step in manure. Why would we want to wash that away, or even risk the chance of it getting washed away? Afilu Tamer Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda had said that you're allowed to bring the manure into Rishus Harabim. So you're allowed to bring the manure into Rishus Harabim according to Rabbi Yehuda, and it sounds like you're allowed to bring it, and you would be potter if anybody you'd be potter. You're allowed to, and you're potter for any damages. So if you tame Rabbi Yehuda, no, you could say that our Mishnah is like Rabbi Yehuda because Mod Rabbi Yehuda shemizik chayiv l'shalim. That while Rabbi Yehuda says that you're allowed to bring the manure into the Rishus Harabim, still, if somebody gets hurt, you're still going to be responsible for that. So that would be consistent with our Mishnah. But 1 second, is that so? We learn in the Mishnah, Moda Rabbi Yehuda b'ner Chaneke she'u potter mipnei shu osa b'rishus. This comes up, of course, in Masechta Shabbos by Hilchos Chanukah, and also in Masechta BavaMetzia, that we say that if a shop owner lights a candle outside of his shop, and then a camel that's carrying flax, catches on fire and also causes damage, so then the store owner is chayiv. But if it was ner Chanukah, which means that he was allowed to be putting his menorah outside, so then he's potter. So my lav rishus the bezdin, that since bezdin says that when it's ner Chanukah it's allowed, so therefore he's potter. So we see that according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says potter by ner Chanukah, it's because whenever you're allowed to do something, you're potter. Lo rishus the mitzvah. No. What it's saying is that because it's dafka mitzvah, that's why he's potter. But just simply being allowed to do something means you're allowed to do it, but that doesn't absolve you of any responsibility. So therefore, we could still argue that Rabbi Yehuda would say that if you're allowed to bring manure into the Rishus Harabim, you're still going to be chayiv if any damage happens. If you're allowed to bring stones into the Rishus Harabim for building, you would still be chayiv if any damage happens. But now here's the kicker. We learned in the Brisa called Elu she'amru mutar lekalkal b'Rishus Harabim emizek chayiv l'shalim Rabbi Yehuda poter. There's the kicker. We learned in the Brisa that whenever the rabbis say that there are things that you're allowed to do in Rishus Harabim, but nonetheless, if it causes damage, you're going to be chayiv to pay. Rabbi Yehuda poter. Rabbi Yehuda says no, you'd be poter from paying. So Elo machvat masis lo Rabbi Yehuda. Rather, it must be that our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Yehuda, because our Mishnah says that while you're allowed to bring stones for building to Rishus Harabim, if any damage happens, you'd be chayiv. Rabbi Yehuda, however, would clearly say that you are poter. Amar Abai says Abai Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Shimon. Kulu svirlu, or they all three of them hold kol makim shenosnu lo chacham rishus vehizik potter, that any place where the rabbis gave permission to do something and damage was caused, potter. Rabbi Yehuda Adamarin, Rabbi Yehuda, that which we just said, right? We had just said that according to Rabbi Yehuda, whenever the chacham say you're allowed to do something, you can be potter from damages. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Ditnan, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel from our Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel over there, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says in our Mishnah, Af misakenu es malachtu lefnei shloshim yom, that he could already start prepping his work in Rishus Harabim 30 days beforehand, and if any damage happens, he's going to be potter. Rabbi Shimon Ditnan, and Rabbi Shimon, as we learn, I think it's going to be a Mishnah in BavaMetzia. I started learning BavaMetzia. The first few daf has been an interesting mix. So the Rabbi Shimon Ditnan Oyamamido ba'aliyah, that if a person puts an oven in an upper floor, so there has to be 3 tvachim of, I think, plaster beneath it, right, for protection. V'kira tefach, for a stove there would have to be 1 tefach below. V'mizik mishalim ashizik, but nonetheless, even if the person is following the directions and puts 3 tvachim of plaster below the oven and 1 tefach below a stove, still, if any damage happens, he has to pay for it. Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon lo amru kol shirim alalu elo shemizik pater min l'shalim. Reb Shimon says, no, though one of these measurements and laws and requirements are that if you're following these requirements and damage happens, you're potter. Somebody who removes, who what's it called when you remove rocks from a stone from a quarry, I guess. Somebody who quarries, I guess, stone from a mountain, and then he gives it to a shaper, a stone shaper, Hasatas chayiv. So the quarrier is no longer chayiv for any damages. It's the shaper that's going to be chayiv. Hasatas shemosar lechamer. The shaper then gives it to the donkey driver to transport. Hachamer chayiv. At that point, the donkey driver is responsible. Hachamer shemosar lekatov. The donkey driver then hands it over to a porter. Hakatov chayiv. So now the porter is chayiv. Hakatov shemosar lebanoi. The porter gives it to a builder. Abanoi chayiv. The builder is now responsible. Abanoi shemosar leadrichal, and the builder then gives it to like the specialist, the expert who knows just the right way to put the stones in the walls. So adrichal chayiv. Then at that point it's this expert who's chayiv. V'miniach even aladimus v'iziko. Now, if once the stone is put on top of the wall, then damage happens. Kulam chayav. At that point, then everybody is chayav. The shalim to pay, I guess, to contribute in the payment, in the damages. Vatanya achron chayav. We learned a brayso that says that only the last person is chayav. V'chulim peturim, and all of them are peturim. So lokashikam b'schiris kam kablanus. It depends. So this is, it's not super clear from like Rashi or whatever, but the art scroll said it this way. That if they're all individual contractors, then only the last person is going to be paid. But kablanus, if they're all contracted together, well then they're all going to be responsible. Okay, Chavi, that was daf Kuf Yud Ches of Masechta BavaMetzia, the second to last daf of Masechta BavaMetzia. Wow, there was a lot on that daf. That was a big second to last daf. Oh my gosh, we started with like Bilbo Baggins, and when the ceiling of the olive press collapses, and then the Shimon can move into the bottom, and we said that it's like the same machlokas Rav and Shmuel about fourth tefachim versus the majority. Oh gosh, we learned about so many, like a million things in this. We learned about Habota Kone by Hefker, and when you move things into Rosh Hashanah with permission, I can be chayav. Wow, there's like 1,000 different things that we learned on that daf. All right, I'll catch you tomorrow for the last daf of. It's really not much. It's pretty small of BavaMetzia. We're gonna wrap up climbing Mount Everest, and then we're gonna be on to Bava Basra. Peace out.